Thank you. You're welcome. Well, happy Thursday, everybody. We're so sorry about the we had technical difficulty. I'm going to try to mute some people. Wonderful. Thank you so much for joining us. We're very sorry, but we're so thrilled that you were able to jump on to the new link. So while we wait just one more minute to make sure everybody found us, if you want to put your introduce yourself in the chat while I admit other people in. Perfect. Well, welcome to the introduction to SolSmart. We are so thrilled to have you guys join us and to learn more about what SolSmart is and how it can benefit your community. We have a very diverse group here, which is very exciting. I'm Brandy O'Quinn, and I live in Fort Worth. So selfishly, I wanted to work with North Central Texas Council of Governments to ensure that our communities in North Texas knew about the resources available to them. I'm with the Interstate Renewable Energy Council, and I joined them just a couple of months ago, so I'm so excited to share this incredible resource with you. All right.
I'll go ahead and introduce myself next. My name is Alyssa Knox, and I am an Environment and Development Planner with the North Central Texas Council of Governments. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. I have been with the COG for about 2 years, and I serve on our regional energy management team. And I am passionate about SolSmart and what it can do for our communities in Texas and throughout the nation as well. So I'm thankful that you're joining us and you are ready to learn as much as I have.
Thanks, Alyssa. Joaquin.
Yeah. Hello, everyone. My name is Joaquin Escalante. I'm with the COG as well. I'm in the transportation department, and I'm on the Clean Fuels and Energy Programs team. And within that, a smaller team called the Energy Integration and Community Readiness team. Within that team, I'm the staff point of contact for SolSmart here at the COG, along with my colleague, Amy Hodges, who will also be on the call today. But again, thank you everyone for your patience during this technical difficulty situation that we have going on, and we'll get started shortly.
Yes, and Amy just joined. Amy, you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. Amy Hodges, I'm a Principal Air Quality Planner here at the Council of Governments, and we're also staff with Dallas-Fort Worth Clean Cities Coalition. Happy to be here. Thank you all for joining, and sorry for the technical difficulties.
Okay.
Thanks, Amy. All right, you want to go to the next slide, please? So this is what we're going to share today. The welcome and introductions. We got a little late start, but that's okay. We will. I will go through my slides quickly because who you really want to hear from is Zach Greene with World Resources Institute. So he's gonna do an overview of solar best practices, the upcoming North Central Texas Council of Governments cohort opportunity, and then obviously you can ask us anything. So you can put your questions in the chat. Next slide, please. So we just did introductions, and the person that you will learn a lot from, again, is Zach Greene. He's a nationally recognized solar expert, and he will be the one conducting the cohort. Zach, if you can wave to everybody. There he is. Wonderful. I also want to just do an introduction to Chris Cook. He is with Encore, and he oversees solar projects for Encore. So he's your go-to person when it's time for utility engagement. So, Chris, I know he is just
here. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you. All right, next slide, please. So this is just standard procedure. There are 2 award numbers because we manage this program jointly with the International City County Management Association. SolSmart is funded by the DOE. Next slide. So SolSmart is a national designation and technical assistance program. The designation recognizes communities that have taken the steps to remove local barriers to solar energy and foster the growth of mature local solar markets. And we are joined by 12 other partner organizations who are recognized as experts in solar. So whether you have joined us because it will help you achieve the metrics that you have set for yourself for your climate action plan, your sustainability plan, or you're just interested in removing impediments and barriers in order to be pro-business, this is going to help you do that. As you all know, our region is one of the fastest growing and the people are coming. So how do we handle that capacity? Removing barriers and being pro-business is going to give you the competitive edge. Next slide. So our role in solar deployment is basically helping you as a local government take action to remove those barriers. Sometimes those barriers are unintended and unintentional barriers. The program offers no cost to you, technical assistance and resources in order for you to become a national solar energy leader. We are also committed to meeting the goals of the Federal Justice 40 program to ensure that equitable opportunities for underserved communities. And SolSmart helps communities reduce the soft costs, the costs of solar development that are unrelated to hardware, and that represents about 65% of the total cost of a solar PV system. Next slide. So again, our role is to help you remove the barriers for solar, provide free technical assistance and resources, and reduce those solar soft costs. Many of you know about the Solar for All that EPA will be awarding, hopefully very soon, and Texas should receive about $400 million. And hopefully it will go to the county consortium of which Dallas County and Tarrant County are a part of. And it is targeting disadvantaged neighborhoods, which align perfectly with SolSmart. This is a very prudent strategy. Next slide. So this is our roadmap to advance solar locally. There are 5 categories that we focus on: the permitting and inspection, the planning and zoning, government operations, community engagement, and market development. So there will be various members of your team that you will need to tap into to ensure that they have the necessary training for you guys to streamline your permitting solar processes. Next slide. So there are 4 levels of designation. The first one being bronze. And this is one of the basic, but a great starting point for communities. And this is just to put you kind of like your big toe in to see if it's something that your community wants to have. And then we have our silver, that is where we train the permitting and inspection staff on solar best practices. And then our gold, so it's achieving a 3-day solar permitting turnaround and codifying your zoning ordinances to remove the obstacles to solar. And then we just created the platinum designation this last year in Fremont, California is our very first platinum designated community. And it is where you adopt instant solar permitting, similar to Solar App. You publish metrics on your local solar growth, and you partner with community organizations to achieve the equity goals. Next slide. So this is where we are. We have 513 designations. In fact, we just got 2 in the past month. We're in 43 states, including District of Columbia, Puerto Rico, U.S. Virgin Islands. And so 1 out of 3 U.S. resident lives in a SolSmart designated community. In Texas, we have 3 bronze, 6 silver, and 5 gold. In fact, our very own North Central Texas Council of Governments is a regional bronze designated organization. Next slide. So the technical assistance examples, which Zach will go into more detail, is within your planning and zoning, doing a zoning review, permitting and inspection, procurement, solar PV system design, feasibility assessments, policy and market expertise, financing, and stakeholder engagement. Next slide. These are customized to your community. It is truly what is best for you and what is palatable to your leadership. So we have program guides that summarize the best practices for local governments and counties and regional governments. The technical assistance, as I said, is tailored specific for you. And it includes expert review of materials. We have webinars, trainings, and then of course, the one-on-one consultations. Next slide. We have templates and examples. The checklist. We also have, for your landing page for solar, some ideas for that. We want to make this as easy as possible, a true toolkit for you to streamline your solar permitting processes. Next slide. So now I am going to hand it over to Zach Greene, who is, again, one of the nationally recognized experts in solar, and we're very fortunate to have him as our technical advisor in the North Texas region. Thank you for your attention. I appreciate it.
Well, thank you so much, Brandy, and welcome all. It's so wonderful to see such a large group of folks here on today's webinar to learn a little bit more about SolSmart and hear about upcoming opportunities for your region. And Brandy did an amazing job of summarizing kind of what SolSmart is at a high level, and I really want to dig into some of like the kind of more granular aspects of what we can help with through this program. And just to provide some additional context, my organization, World Resources Institute, or WRI, is one of the partners on the SolSmart team that Brandy mentioned earlier on. And so we're one of the kind of core technical assistance providers. We work with communities all across the country, including in Texas, to provide direct technical assistance through this program, and very honored to be the one supporting the COG here in this effort today and in the coming months. With that, I'm going to jump in and give folks a flavor of what this looks like. Brandy mentioned some of the categories that SolSmart's framed around. We have foundational categories and special focus categories. The foundational categories are really those around permitting inspection, which I'll talk about first, and then planning and zoning. These are really instrumental when we're thinking about kind of what are the barriers, potential barriers to solar deployment, and what are the ways that we can really seek to advance more deployment and catalyze that deployment in our communities. And so within that permitting inspection category, there are about 28 different criteria that signify best practices that have been developed by communities like yourselves, by subject matter experts, all together kind of in a room, hashing out kind of what do we see at the national level as being the practices that we should uphold at the local level. And so some of these criteria for permitting inspection include posting a solar permitting checklist online to give folks an understanding of what is required for a permit in your community, posting inspection requirements online, as well as information about how folks would actually sign up for an inspection and kind of what that inspection will review. And then we do have requirements or considerations around advancing faster permitting turnaround times. So one thing that you might hear about is Solar App Plus. That's a new technology that's been developed by the National Labs and Department of Energy that actually enables instantaneous permitting of projects, and something that you can deploy actually at no cost in your locality to try to reduce that turnaround time and reduce the burden on your staff. And so just to give an example, communities in North Central Texas are already doing these things. So on the next slide, I pulled an example of the permitting checklist. So Cannondale has a permitting checklist. Again, the checklist is, the idea behind this is just give folks an example of, or an indication of what they need to submit in a comprehensive package when they're pulling a permit. The idea behind this is the more information that you provide, the better the permit applications will be, and the easier it will be, and the quicker the turnaround time will be for your staff to actually review and approve a permit. So this action, the permitting checklist, is a requirement for the bronze tier that Brandy had mentioned. It does not require you to change your processes at all, but just to make them explicit so that residents and businesses understand, and specifically the installers understand what needs to be submitted for a full permit. We can go to the next slide. The second foundational category that I want to touch on today is our planning and zoning category. Zoning matters. The way that you enable solar, both small scale and large scale, through your zoning ordinance, will have a direct impact on the ability to actually install solar. So one of the most fundamental things that we do as a program is actually review your zoning code for you and highlight any areas where there potentially are barriers, either intentional or unintentional, that might disallow for a solar deployment. In addition to that, we support local governments as they consider ways to integrate solar PV into their plans and develop metrics around those goals. We work with communities that want to change their zoning ordinances to enable for by right solar, rooftop solar in different regions. And then we also do work on utility scale solar installations as well. I want to highlight here that the program is broadly focused, is mainly focused on distributed generation. So that means rooftop solar. So what you're going to see on homes and maybe small businesses. We do support large scale solar considerations, but those aren't really a requirement of the program. And so if we go to the next slide, again, I've pulled an example from the region where we see a community that has integrated solar into their plans. You can see here under strategy 4 of Louisville's plan that they're going to work to integrate solar generation onto their city facilities. And that's obviously an area that we're seeing increasing interest, is how do we deploy solar both on our community facilities and how do we expand adoption in our communities broadly. And going on to the next slide, I kind of want to transition to that same point. Government operations, we know that local governments themselves are really looking at ways to deploy solar for their own facilities. One of the requirements to achieve our platinum designation that Brandy had mentioned, the highest tier of designation, is to actually install solar on local government facilities or on local government controlled land. We know that many localities are looking at this as a potential option, especially with the Inflation Reduction Act, the IRA, providing incentives for solar deployment and enabling local governments to actually get a direct payment of those tax credits now, as opposed to previously when they would have to go through a third party to actually see that benefit. So we know that that direct pay opportunity is something that's interesting. So SolSmart really has a robust way of supporting communities that are looking to install solar on their local facilities. So as Brandy mentioned, we provide some technical assistance on conducting feasibility analyses on potential buildings that you're considering for solar deployment. So if you're looking to achieve this criteria, we can work with you on determining what sites might be the best, understanding the potential feasibility of those sites for solar, doing some mocking up of solar installations on those roofs. So we have a pretty broad array of things that we can support with. In addition to actually installing solar, we know that local governments have a really strong role in this entire ecosystem. So whether it's working, with utility or reps on these kind of issues, whether it's, discussing issues at the PUCT or in other venues, the local government voice is a really important one in these conversations. And as the landscape for solar changes, really important to help understand where local governments can fit in. So SolSmart can really provide some guidance there, demonstrate where other local governments have effectively weighed in to collaborate with utilities, with regulators, to really advance the kind of what folks want to see broadly in this arena. And so if you go to the next slide, again, pulling from examples within the region, we have Cedar Hill, which actually has installed a large solar array on top of their government center. Not only have they installed this array, but they have an amazing online kind of tool that enables community members and others to see the generation profile of that array. So you can actually see in real time how much electricity is being generated from this array. And this is a wonderful example of ways that you can go above and beyond. So not only are you powering your own facilities this way, but you're also enabling others to see the benefits that are accruing from this solar installation. If we go to the next slide, that's really another core area of SolSmart, which is community engagement. How do you expand the understanding of solar? How do you expand the education of solar to the residents and businesses in your communities that might want to adopt it? And so we can work with you to really try to create a robust catalog of different resources that you can share within your community. It can be from supporting solar information sessions that you might develop, creating like a solar work group or something at the local level to ensure that there's broad engagement on these issues, to even partnering with local community-based organizations on advancing solar in the region. One of the fundamental pieces of our silver designation tier is actually posting what we call a solar landing page on a local government website. These web pages we feel are really critical to expanding community understanding of solar energy, and just being transparent about the local government processes related to it. So if you go to the next slide, we'll see an example of one of these solar landing pages from Selena. So you can see that they reference SolSmart, but also on here they link to things like their permitting process.
Now,
We're getting
I
some
need a
background
reminder
noise,
and see if
Brandy.
she's,
We can just mute
uh,
folks here.
able to connect.
That's all Randy's not gonna.
Thank you, Brandy. Things like, showing potential contractors for solar, showing consumer protection resources, which we know are really critical to protecting our residents and businesses from potential bad actors, as well as, again, highlighting their permitting processes. So they link to their permitting checklist here. But this solar landing page is a great way just to consolidate all resources into a single landing place that makes it easy to use for your residents and businesses and provides them with information from a trusted third party as they make their decision to potentially go solar. And then our final category that we focus on is market development. The idea behind this is what are the steps that you can take as a local government to really support a more broad and diverse workforce and solar market in your community and in your region. So this could be things like supporting a community solar program, or launching or supporting a solarize or bulk purchase campaign. It could be working with financial institutions in your regions to provide better options for loans and grants for solar PV projects. We know not all financial institutions understand solar, and so it's helpful to have the local government work with those institutions to ensure that they're offering loans and other packages to buyers that might be interested. And finally, we know that localities can also provide incentives. So an example of that bulk purchase campaign that I mentioned in Plano, they've run multiple solar co-ops there through one of the vendors that kind of supports these efforts. You can see here kind of a quote from one of the staff there about the benefit of these co-ops. And in the upper right, there's actually a map that's created by RMI, which is one of our an organization that we collaborate with a lot. They supported some of these solar co-ops or solarized campaigns, and they found them to be a really effective way to supporting adoption within low and moderate income communities and disadvantaged communities. And as Brandy mentioned, working within disadvantaged communities is a kind of a cornerstone of the SolSmart program, given that it's a Justice 40 program under the federal government. So it's a great opportunity to expand adoption into communities that might not have otherwise decided to go solar. And so, that is kind of broadly an overview of the various opportunities and criteria that SolSmart support. We have a laundry list of these criteria. I can't remember what the most recent count is. I think it's almost 90 different actions that you can take as localities to work towards SolSmart designation and to expand solar at the local level. And so, as for those who are interested in the cohort that we'll be talking about in a little bit, we'll dig much deeper into each of these areas and work with you all to effectively adopt them at within your localities. But with that, I'll stop and see if there are any questions from the audience on SolSmart as broadly, or any of the best practices that we had discussed.
If you would like to have a question answered, you can place it in the chat, or you can use the raise your hand feature and we can call on you to unmute and share your question. There was a question about the slides going out to participants. Yes, you will receive the slides, and we will be putting the recording on NCTCOG's YouTube channel. So you will have all that information at your disposal in a follow-up email. Okay, I'm not seeing any questions, and since we got started a little late, we can keep on rolling, but please, if you think of any, feel free to place them in the chat and we'll have some time at the end to go over them again. Thank you.
Wonderful. So I guess with that, we'll move on to the next section, which is around this upcoming opportunity that the COG is supporting. And so, SolSmart, as Brandy mentioned initially, it's a designation and technical assistance programs. And one of the ways in which we've delivered technical assistance before is to a cohort of communities. And so if we go to the next slide, a cohort is basically a way that we convene multiple local governments at the same time. And we use a series of workshops to leverage both peer dialogues and education for subject matter experts to help the participants better understand or act on an issue kind of together. And so the idea is we want to support a large group of communities within the North Central Texas region to achieve designation. And we feel that kind of creating these workshops and bringing folks together might enable that. And so this cohort is going to really have three key objectives. One, we hope to deliver really robust education and support local action on adopting solar best practices. We hope to enable peers from the region to engage with one another and talk about these issues. How are they affecting each of their communities? What issues are they running into? What opportunities do they see to support efforts here? So working through some of the problems and issues collectively, and then kind of at the end of the day, hoping to get communities designated at their preferred tier of designation in the SolSmart program. And so this cohort would be open to any local governments within the region, those seeking to have their first designation, or even those who want to level up to a higher level of designation. So, we saw some of the communities previously as examples that have already worked through the program. There's always an opportunity to continue working through the program and receiving technical assistance and moving up to higher levels of designation. And so, we're really hoping that this kind of communal way of working together through the program will reduce some of the barriers and just make it a more enjoyable and collegial process. So just to give folks an understanding of what we're envisioning, this would be a 5-month process. We'd have one meeting every month, and these meetings would effectively help you all get towards at least the bronze, if not silver level of designation. The idea is that hopefully we'll get a lot of that completed just in the workshop sessions themselves. There will also be some supporting activities that you all will need to do outside of these sessions, but we'll be very clear on what those are. And again, they'll all be in support of achieving some of the prerequisite requirements necessary to get to those bronze and silver tiers. To give you a sense, the first and the session kind of sequence might change here, but our initial thinking is that our first session will be just a setting the stage session where we'll talk a little bit about the state and regional context for solar energy, provide kind of an Energy 101 tutorial so that folks understand the broader energy ecosystem and how solar fits in. And then really dive more into kind of what to expect throughout the rest of the cohort and making sure that folks are prepared for what's next. Session 2, thinking about planning for solar development. So we would provide some trainings on best practices related to small and large scale solar deployment, both for planning and zoning considerations. We talk to folks about what they've experienced locally when it comes to development and codifying these types of uses. The third session would be around permitting inspection. We'd have a subject matter expert come on and provide an in-depth training for both your inspection and permitting staff to ensure that they're up to date on the most recent best practices related to both solar energy and battery energy storage systems. So this is a great course for folks that have never gone through it, and also for folks that have attended these in the past, it'll be a good refresher as well. In session 4, we'll be talking a little about community engagement efforts. So what are ways that you can really expand the understanding of residents and businesses around solar energy, to engage with them on these types of issues. And then it will also be split into talking a little bit about municipal operations. So we can do a little bit of a deeper dive into understanding ways that you can procure solar for your facilities, whether that's on-site or off-site solar, and what are the opportunities presented through new federal funds to potentially support your efforts. And then the final session will be a kind of a wrap up and a next steps session. It'll be a catch-all to support you in addressing any issues that might have arisen during the other sessions that we might not have had sufficient time to cover. So if folks are interested in doing a deeper dive into those Solarize or bulk purchase campaigns, we could do that. We could talk a little bit more about forging relationships on solar energy or permitting best practices. So we can see kind of where folks are throughout the course of the cohort and really tailor that last session to address any kind of outstanding needs. And then also chart a pathway forward. So this cohort is a 6-month cohort, but we know that solar deployment will happen beyond that. So we want to make sure that you leave the cohort feeling like you have the connections and resources that you need to effectively continue your work moving into the future. And then, across this kind of spectrum and even beyond that July 2024 date, you will have access to direct one-on-one technical assistance through the SolSmart program. So while each of these sessions will be a group session where we'll be working with communities across the region, you also have the opportunity to meet one-on-one with myself, Brandy, and other folks from the SolSmart team to address more specific issues at your local level. And that assistance does not stop. Again, at July 2024, the SolSmart program is currently funded through 2027. And you can access support and level up anytime between now and then and potentially beyond, depending on what the Department of Energy decides to do with the program. So why participate in this cohort? I think we see 4 kind of main reasons here that we think this will be a valuable opportunity for localities in the region. First, really gain a deeper understanding of solar best practices and emerging issues. So we know that there's going to, as Brandy mentioned, there's going to be an influx of solar development. We know that there's going to be hundreds of millions of dollars flowing into Texas from some of the federal funding programs alone, and that people are more interested in deploying solar and storage in this day and age. And so these types of assets are coming into your community. And so it's really important to get ahead of that, make sure that your processes enable that and that they're not going to be overly burdensome to either your staff or to your community members. So it's a great opportunity just to gain a deeper understanding. And again, we'll be going into depth too about some of the federal funding opportunities that might support you as you're considering adoption or as you're considering supporting your community at large. Second, this is an opportunity to work through the SolSmart program in an expedited way. The cohort structure has been developed in a way that will hopefully, again, get you to bronze or silver almost entirely by just attending those 5 sessions. Again, there's going to be some outside work, but hopefully it'll be minimal. And so this is just a great way to work through the program in an expedited, kind of curated way, and to achieve that designation status that you might be interested in. Third, this is just a great opportunity to connect with your peers. I feel that peer-to-peer engagement is really critical. I've been a staff member both at the city of Austin and at the city of Philadelphia in Pennsylvania, and both of those experiences have taught me that I'm not anything without the peers around me. And engaging with peers from communities across the states that I've worked in has been one of the most valuable things, in my opinion, and has really helped me advance my work. We hope that you feel the same way, and that this cohort would not be just an opportunity for us to speak at you, but for you to speak among yourselves to really find kind of alignment across issues that you've been working on, and potentially work kind of more holistically as a region as we're thinking about some of these additional funds coming down the pipe. And then finally, again, SolSmart is a designation program. This is an opportunity to receive a nationally recognized designation from the Department of Energy. In addition to that, we do a lot of media acknowledgement around communities that have advanced and achieved SolSmart designation. I would say, given the unique nature of this kind of cohort opportunity, I would imagine the program is going to be very excited to highlight the wins here. And so it would just be another great opportunity to get your community some acknowledgement for the work that you have done and are going to continue to do in this space. So next slide. So I want to talk a little bit now about next steps for those who might be interested in the cohort. So at a fundamental level, all communities that participate in the SolSmart program are required to submit a solar statement to participate. A solar statement is basically just a letter that demonstrates your local government's interest in pursuing SolSmart designation. And we require this of all participating communities just because We have limited funds for this program, and we want to make sure that we're dedicating our time and resources to communities that are working towards one of those tiers of designation. So all communities that receive technical assistance must submit one of these, and it's a prerequisite for all of the designation tiers that we've talked about today. I want to emphasize that this statement is not a binding agreement. It is not a memorandum of understanding. It is not in any way, shape, or form a legally binding document. This is just, again, an indication from you that you're interested in this, and it's just kind of the key to unlocking the broader technical assistance. We have received these solar statements that have been signed by department heads, elected officials. We've had some communities go through kind of a council approval process. Honestly, it's whatever works best for your community. We are more than fine if it's a department head signing on. We want it to be somebody with decision-making power, but we don't think it has to necessarily go through an elected official or an official approval process unless that's something that you want to do or are required to do within your community. And so kind of, getting that solar statement in is a key piece. And then just broadly in terms of next steps to join this cohort, one, I think it's really important that you take this opportunity back to your team and to your leadership to make sure that this is something that's of interest to your community. I would also, engage with permitting and inspection as well as planning and zoning staff who might not have been able to attend this call. Given the fact that they'll have to attend sessions, I'll flag this especially for the permitting and inspection folks. Those trainings are to receive credit. They have to be attended by the permitting inspection staff or some of the permitting inspection staff in your community. So just making sure that you have some buy-in there, I think is pretty critical. I will note that we'll be recording everything in this cohort series. So, if they can't attend the specific session, that's okay. They can watch things later on, and we have other tools and resources for them. But it's also good just to kind of ahead of time, just see where they're at in terms of their interest in this. Once you have those internal discussions and you're ready to say, I want to participate, just send a solar statement to both myself and Joaquin by March 22nd. Understanding that, if your community goes through kind of the route where you want to work it through a council process or where you want to get an elected official to sign on, or you just need time working it through the proper channels, if you can't get it in by Friday, March 22nd, then please just send us an email noting that you're interested and that you're working on developing and finalizing that solar statement, and we'll count you in on the cohort as well. We don't want this to be a barrier to entry. So please, if you're interested, just make sure that you reach out to us by the 22nd of March to demonstrate that. When you reach out, it'd be excellent if you could also share the names and contact information from any other staff that will be participating with you from your community. This will just enable us to effectively tailor our outreach and calendar invitations to make sure we're hitting on all of the folks that we need to have involved. And then the final piece is that as part of the SolSmart process, the SolSmart team actually undertakes a review of all the publicly available information about efforts you've taken to date around solar energy. And we do a deep dive review of your zoning ordinance. Those are things that just help us set a baseline of where you are. You get credit in the program for all of the credits that you've already achieved through previous actions. So we just do this to kind of set a baseline and see kind of where are you in relation to each of the designation tiers. What will you need to do to get to bronze, silver, gold, or platinum? This is something that we'll share with your community. And actually, we can schedule a one-on-one call with each community on this to not only review those results, but then to develop a broader TA strategy. Again, we'll be working through some of the core criteria within the cohort sessions, but we know that other communities might have their own interests, their own goals that they're working towards. And so we're happy to kind of establish what those strategies are in these one-on-one sessions outside of the cohort meetings. And then the final piece is, if you have any questions about any of this, or if you have any near-term technical assistance needs, so if you're working on a project, if you have a question kind of about your ordinance or about some initiative that you're proceeding with in the near term before that March 22nd date, please reach out to Joaquin and myself, and we can definitely help you in the near term. And so with that, that is my presentation. I really hope to see all of you all in these cohort sessions. The more folks that we get, the better. It's wonderful to see a lot of faces kind of and a lot of banter between peers in these cohort meetings. And so really hopeful that we'll see a robust participation from the region. Thank you all.
Okay, we have some time for questions. Again, you can unmute yourself. We'll raise your hand and we'll call on you to unmute yourself, or just put your question in the chat. I see a question here regarding if SolSmart works with energy providers to provide plans that encourage solar energy, or does SolSmart provide a resource of power provider companies with knowledge about solar power? How do we connect those companies with the providers, or connect cities with providers?
So SolSmart doesn't necessarily kind of promote any suppliers over others. We do try to help communities create a holistic kind of list of potential options there. However, what I would say is, we do encourage folks to reach out to designated communities. So we have a list of designated communities on our website. If you see that a community is designated as SolSmart Bronze, Silver, Platinum, Gold, or Platinum, they might be a good community to reach out to if you have any specific things that you want to address with them. And so, again, we don't necessarily uplift or promote any specific plans, but are happy to work with communities to better understand kind of the energy landscape in Texas and the types of plans that are available, and to any resources that provide a really broad overview of what those plans are.
Zach, would you speak more to the potential time commitments of the cohort in terms of length of meetings? How much time are we committing outside of the actual work sessions themselves?
Yeah, that's a wonderful question. I know that's always top of mind. We all are busy people and have multiple things that are on our plates. And so we're cognizant of that, and we're really going to try to right size all of these sessions to really try to accommodate busy schedules. And so I would say we're going to try to aim for about an hour to an hour and a half for most sessions. Some of the trainings might be the permitting inspection training might be a little bit longer, just to accommodate the entirety of kind of what is included in there. But again, we're going to be recording all these sessions. So if you're unable to stay for the entire time, there's opportunities to go back and review some of these. But yeah, most of the sessions will be an hour to an hour and a half. And then with the other piece I would note is for the external work, the biggest piece around this are going to be, developing your permitting checklist. So that would be some time spent working with your permitting staff on actually kind of detailing out each of the requirements for your permits at the local level. And then we're going to be promoting the use of the solar landing page and the adoption of that criteria to help communities get designated. And so it would be working through your internal processes on actually getting a web page launched, or updating a current web page that you want to use for that resource. We actually provide a template for that. So, we have all the useful links and things, but it would just be working with your internal IT administrator or whomever is managing your website to get something updated. So those are the two biggest things that would be working outside of this cohort. We'd also recommend that you work with your zoning, planning and zoning staff and commissions on some of the recommendations provided. But again, none of those things would necessarily be required as part of this cohort series. They would just be, I guess, valuable next steps to consider moving forward.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? I'm not seeing any raised hands. And there's none in the chat. Okay, well, if there are no other questions, we want to thank you for joining us today, and thank you for your patience in the beginning.